ability to understand how it works, to understand how it works.
Q-tape. Possibilities number. And 3, 2, 1.
Live from Indianapolis, Indiana, this is the iPad Possibilities Show with your host, Tim Chapman.
Welcome to the iPad Possibilities Podcast, episode number 46, Jobs at D8. Tonight is Sunday, June 6th. I'm here with John Finnan for the weekly live show. How are you doing tonight, John?
Good, Tim. And you?
Doing great.
Great.
So, there's been a lot going on this week, surprisingly, because most weeks leading up to a big Steve Jobs keynote, it's normally a pretty slow news week, but we've had a lot of things happen. And the first thing I wanted to just talk about was the recent AT&T data changes. I've shared my thoughts on the Friday-Saturday show this week, but I was wondering what your thoughts, John, were on this.
Well, it's kind of interesting. One wonders if the reason for the sudden announcement is because of something that's going to be announced next week. So, and I kind of agree with you, Tim, in that it seems rather unfair that there was all this hype about the 3G iPad, and you get the 3G plan of unlimited for $30 for a month, or slightly more than a month, and then it disappears for anybody who hasn't already gotten the 3G and signed up for it. And now you're stuck with it, right? If you don't want to lose it, you have to pay it all the time, and you can't opt in and opt out like we were led to believe. And I mean, that's unfair. You can still opt in and opt out, but you just aren't going to be able to get that unlimited plan. It disappears once you quit using it. So certainly seems like kind of a bait and switch kind of deal.
Yeah, definitely. And I've been reading, the biggest thing is they just don't have their facts straight. They haven't clarified enough of the data points we need to be informed consumers. There's reports from AT&T's Facebook website from official AT&T guys that say you can still turn it on and off and get unlimited data, and we've been hearing that's not the case, and it's just kind of mixed reports and a lot of unclear things, which is not a good thing for consumer. And it's just such a fast turnaround, right? Because they announced it on Wednesday, and by Monday, that's gone.
Yeah, it's one wonders what really were the motivating factors to make this announcement now and to make it such a quick turn around to have it effective. It certainly one would like to be seeing how many 3G iPads were ordered this weekend.
Yeah. I was kind of wondering if you ordered like a 16 gigabyte just to get that $30 plan. So evidently, if you order by June 6th, you can still sign up even though you don't have it in your hands yet.
Right. So I guess it's midnight today. So
yeah,
it's tempting. It's tempting because, but I looked at my history on the iPhone, and granted, the iPhone is not the iPad, but I would have to kind of tend to agree with AT&T. I mean, I had a couple of months where I was pretty heavy with data and at 500 meg, but most of the time I, was at maybe 200 to 300 meg. And certainly if I currently had a 3G iPad, I probably would expect that I would be using less data on the iPhone because there would be, not the need when I'm away from a Wi-Fi network to pull up the iPhone and use it for data when I could, use the iPad. But, then how much data would I be using on the iPad? I know you've been using quite a bit at different times, and that's always a question.
Yeah, my big complaint, and that's my main point about the Friday Saturday show, was they lump the iPad together with smartphones. And this is definitely not a smartphone. You're going to use this device differently. I think grandma and grandpa type people might expect to almost replace their home internet connection with 3G, which is an unfair expectation. But I think 5 gigabytes would be a more, that's a more reasonable cap to put on something like this, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it does now. Granted, it's slightly less expensive than the typical 5 gigabyte capped plans for other smartphones, but it's still 2 gigabytes, not 5 gigabytes. So it's even though it's a little cheaper, it's certainly more limiting potentially. But for the vast number of people, it's probably not going to be an issue. Certainly with the iPhone, But lumping in the iPad, that's a question. It's too new a device to really come up and say how much data does people really use on the iPad.
Yeah, they have no stats. They got the 2% number. People don't go above 2% based on phones, right? So
right.
Yeah, they should have. I think they should have held off. It's hard to believe Apple and AT&T didn't have some sort of contract that said, "Hey, you need to do this for a year" or something like that. Or Apple might have broke that contract with perhaps a Verizon iPad or a Verizon iPhone going to be announced Monday. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, I would feel pretty safe in saying that Apple probably didn't break a contract, but it may be that they all of a sudden AT&T found out that there was something in the wings for somebody else and said, well, we're going to change some things here. But you don't know. I mean, it's hard to do this, but I'll play devil's advocate for AT&T and say maybe they're really doing this to save people some money. If most people can get by with 200 megs of data, well, they've just saved themselves a significant amount of money at the end of the year. And if the rest of the 98% of the people stay under the 2 gig, they're saving $5 a month. $60 isn't nothing to sneeze at.
Yeah.
But
I'd probably say you can tier it. You can have the lower price point at $15 to get to the bargain buyers, right? And then remain for $15 more. You can have unlimited, or even for $20 more. You could raise the unlimited price. Even I think
Yeah, I think that is kind of hokey that you. I think if you get the 2 gig at 25 is the next gig is 10 more. Is that right? So you're actually paying more for 3 gig than you had for unlimited before, which seems kind of not so great. I mean, they should have at least gone. Everybody else has a 5 gig $30 plan, so they should have said, we're at least for $35, we're going to give you 5 gig, not just 3 gig. I mean,
I've been looking into alternatives. Sprint with their Evo is going to have unlimited data, but it's I think $80 or something. With I think that includes voice and stuff, but also T-Mobile. I noticed they do something kind of interesting. They do unlimited. I think it's $40 for unlimited just data that's like a SIM card or whatever. But at 5 gigabytes, they start to throttle your usage. They don't cut you off. They just slow it down to make sure the network's stable, right? Couldn't AT&T start throttling at 5 gigabytes and not cut you off? And that's something like that.
That's kind of hokey for them to say that they throttle it after 5 gigabytes to make the network stable. Because if you're doing 5 gigabytes, it's probably unlikely that you're doing it all at one time. So by throttling you once you hit that 5 gig thing, it's not saying that you were going to continue to try to use up all the network bandwidth at once. I mean, it could have been that for 20 days you used up 5 gigabytes and now you're throttled for the last 10 days because the network would be more stable. That doesn't make sense. It's just another excuse for the fact that phone companies are wanting to make as much money as they can. They're a business. I can't fault them. They're a business and they have shareholders. And if I was a shareholder, I'd be wanting them to be making some good profits, and at least they don't charge us like they charge us for SMS.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of interesting though. Looking back, the original iPhone, one of the biggest things Steve Jobs announced to us with the original iPhone as well was you don't have to worry about how much data you use because for $20 you have unlimited data on this original iPhone, and that was a breakthrough deal because no one else would set those terms of agreement of unlimited. And finally, after 3 or 4 years, it's finally to an end. It's I don't know. It's kind of interesting looking back.
well, although that original iPhone is grandfathered in too, right? So if you continue,
$20 still. Yeah, I mean, if you grab an original iPhone off eBay, I believe you can still activate through iTunes for $20 a month. You get unlimited data and 200 SMS messages. And a little known secret is that you can actually take that SIM card out and put it in a 3G iPhone, and it works. Just a little known secret. I just wanted to share that.
Interesting. My wife has the original iPhone and still and it's Edge, so maybe that's one reason why they still give you unlimited.
Yeah, it's hard to use a lot of data.
Yeah, it'd be hard to use 5 gigabyte on Edge, I think.
Yeah, well, we talked about the original iPhone a little bit later. I'm actually starting to use it again as a phone, so we'll get that later. But enough of AT&T. I've had my thoughts, and you shared yours. But the next story is iPads they're doing a test trial in Australia with the Jetstar, aviation flight service, whatever airline, I guess appropriate term. For $10, around $10 in Australia, you'll be able to rent an iPad, and you're able to use it during takeoff and landing, which is something that you can't use electronic devices during that time, right? So they're trying this out, I guess, in the next month or so, and just kind of an interesting thing. They're kind of replacing the entertainment systems that planes typically buy with iPads. So I think it's kind of cool. It'll be interesting to see what apps they might preload or what videos they might preload. I guess that's a more interesting question.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. I actually did some work for a couple of years, a few years back for a startup airline, and there was always a lot of discussion about the fact of whether there was any validity in turning off your electronic devices. There haven't been any real studies to show that you need to turn off your electronic devices, but I guess in general, most airlines and the FAA want to play it safe because obviously the most difficult time is for airline flight is takeoff and landing. So, but that being said, certainly if they don't have any kind of Wi-Fi network, and the iPads are all have that turned off, I don't see any issues from a safety standpoint. Question is, from you, like you say, what are they going to give you on there? Is it the in-flight magazine on there, or some videos and stuff to watch? Should be interesting.
Yeah, and you mentioned the electronic takeoff and landing, right? I know some airline employees, and they tell me it's not a technical thing. They want your attention, so if they need to do some emergency landing or whatever,
It is, and it's supposed to be, you're supposed to be attentive as well. Although they don't make you put down your magazine, right? Yeah. So, but I can see that they wouldn't want you to be, headphones in, listening to some, music while things are going on. But really, it is a lot of it is about maintaining that attentiveness, so that if something happens, there's very little time to get people's attention. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with the iPads.
Yep, definitely. The final story, and it's kind of the weird one, is Apple started pulling applications that emulate their own simulated desktop on the iPad. So I think this is kind of them trying to get rid of new OSs built upon this OS through applications. A couple apps have been pulled, some haven't. It's kind of hit and miss. What are your thoughts on this one?
Well, that's kind of interesting. Again, it's one of those things that we can try to read into what that's all about, and is the timing significant right before WWDC and the what we hope to have more information on iPhone OS 4. But I wonder about this really, because it seems like Apple's already kind of boxed people in, and I don't know why they would not want somebody to have multiple functions in using this big screen. I had a couple of apps in mind when the iPad was first introduced, and I saw some of the limitations of it still using the iPhone OS. I had some similar things about desktop type applications where, particularly when there wasn't a calculator or a clock, in the standard applications, it's like, well, why don't we give people a calendar, clock, and let them read their mail or let them browse the web or whatever, So it really makes me think that maybe there's something more to this iPhone OS 4, and we'll have to see what happens.
I completely agree. I'm very excited to see what Steve announces tomorrow, because I'm really hoping I get to install the iPad OS 4 on my Wi-Fi iPad to start playing around and seeing what little enhancements they've made, especially for the iPad, and it'll be fun to see what just happens tomorrow.
Yeah. I remember early on with the iPhone that actually I think it was right after the App Store opened and people started to mock up future devices from Apple, and several people mocked up what was at the time, I guess, considered kind of like a clock radio replacement, where it was a larger screen and you actually ran 2 or 3, depending upon the mock-up, you saw 2 or 3 iPhone apps side by side. So you could have, the alarm clock, and you could have the weather and something else. And I often wonder why Apple hasn't moved down that path to allow something like that. So I'm still kind of wondering whether they will.
Yeah, I saw a mock-up earlier today of the iPhone 2007, the iPad 2010, the iBoard, and then the iMac. Just, these touchscreen devices getting bigger and bigger, the iBoard being perfect for board games and on your living room table. Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what develops and what new devices come out and all of that. But enough of that. We're out of the news section now, and I just want to talk about a couple of updates that I thought were significant. The first 2 were for the Omni apps, OmniGraffle and OmniGraph Sketcher. And I just want to mention this because they now have VGA output support. So if you're in a meeting, you can share your graphs or mindstorms or whatever you want through that connection. So I just like the idea of more applications enabling that feature. And I always like to mention the growing list of applications that has that now.
Yeah, this is pretty great in my mind for OmniGraffle. I actually asked Ken, was it right, when we interviewed him, whether that was on the drawing board, because I just know a bunch of people through my type of work that would love to be able to quickly sketch up something with their finger and show it off to a group of people. So I think that's going to be killer. So that should probably make many more sales for him.
Yep, I agree. And math teachers will love OmniGraph Sketcher with that output, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That makes that thing a whole lot more useful in my mind, to be able to. I mean, the whole premise behind it is that you don't necessarily have a bunch of hard numbers, but you're wanting to kind of show what a graph would look like if you collected the numbers. And so, being able to share that with multiple people at a time makes it a much more powerful app.
Yep, definitely agree. And a little update for OmniFocus for the iPad. That should be coming out by the end of June. I think they're taking the WWDC week off. I believe they're even demoing it for one of the design awards there and planning on releasing it to the public sometime later this month. So it's coming out soon, and then following that, the Omni Outline, which should be a big, big release. And very excited about those apps. But anyways, Stanza was the other big one of the week. I'm not sure, there might have been some other ones, but Stanza added iPad support. So it also, beyond that, it also added like PDF support and some other file formats. But a pretty significant update. It becomes one of those apps that can become kind of your universal ebook reader for non-DRM stuff, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Last week I think we mentioned the Barnes & Noble e-reader. But yeah, I mean, Stanza coming out now is great news. I've been a long-time user of Stanza on the iPhone, and it's just makes the iPad that much more of the universal reader for everything.
Yep, couldn't agree more. So those were the big updates of the week. I wanted to get to a hardware review. Yesterday was my birthday, so I got a lot of cool stuff from my iPad.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I got a couple of things. One's on its way still. One is called the Waterfield Eco Sleeve. It's basically a sleeve designed to carry around your iPad inside the Apple case. So that's on its way, and the one item I have with me is the Apple keyboard dock. This is something I didn't want to pick up by myself because it's a nicety, and I think I'd use it a lot, and I think I will use it a lot. But I think it's great having this as well as the Bluetooth keyboard, because I see different use cases for both of these keyboards. The Bluetooth keyboard is fantastic for if you're laying in bed and you want to type out an article with just that keyboard in your lap and an iPhone in its case. This keyboard dock is excellent for just having it right next to your desk, docked with your iPad or whatever. And it's got some extra special keys for easily accessing the home screen, the search, photo album, all those kinds of things. So it's a great little keyboard, and it's, I guess, a pretty cool device. It's $69, and I see this more useful beyond the iPad with the iPod Touch. This is something I played around with. I've got the latest generation iPod Touch, and I tested it out with this keyboard dock. And oddly enough, it worked. The camera connection kit did not work, but this, the keyboard dock, worked great. It's was kind of cool because it fits there nicely because it's so thin. The iPhone doesn't fit because it's thicker, but the iPod, this is a perfect little, if you want to type out an article, you can grab this keyboard dock, pop in your iPod Touch, and you're off and running. You can answer emails that way. It's a pretty cool device for the iPod Touch especially, and it's not even marketed as working with it. So that was a pretty cool thing. And all the special function keys such as search and brightness and all those things work with it. So that's Apple keyboard dock. Do you have any questions about it, John? Have you played around with one, or?
You know, I've seen them. I've played around with them in the Apple Store. It's great to hear that it works with the iPod Touch. That's something I was wondering about myself. So it's good to hear that, and I wonder, what we might see with any new iPhones or something, and maybe they'll be a little thinner and be able to work with it as well.
Yeah. I wasn't able to put any of the iPhones because they're thick, but the iPod Touch, these things are super thin.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the keyboard dock almost works better with this iPod Touch because the problem that you can have with the iPad is it's so big that it needs to be on a desk, right? With the iPod, this is very stable to just, you can have it sideways, it won't fall out. It's a perfect little thing for the iPod Touch because you can just be on a plane or whatever and just start typing, So it's also better for the iPod Touch because when you look at cases for iPod Touches, you'll notice most of them don't have props like the iPad, cases. iPad cases are designed to, prop it up to make it easier to type on or watch movies on. iPod Touches, they're supposed to be as small as possible, no stands or anything built into them. And this it makes that even a more perfect device for the iPod.
Great.
So yeah, that's that little review, and I'll have some other stuff on the way. And I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of my experiences getting the iPhone. I've got an original iPhone up and running on the T-Mobile network. And I think more and more people are going to think this is something they might be interested in. Mainly because people talk less and less. I've noticed that I don't use the phone as a phone very much anymore. And I use it more to consume data and all those kinds of things that I now do on the iPad. I tried to do all of this by doing the Skype deal, doing everything over Skype, but noticed in some cases Skype doesn't give you the best sound quality if you're doing like a job interview over the phone, or if you want to talk to someone for an extended length of time. Skype works great if I'm calling up like a business to see if they're open or with things like that. But I thought I needed a real type of phone for different use cases. So I brought my iPhone. It is jailbroken and unlocked to the T-Mobile store today. And I was very impressed with their layout and everything. It was a great experience overall. And just told the lady that I wanted to get a prepaid SIM card for my iPhone to just make calls. And it's a pretty sweet deal because there's no expiration like there is on the AT&T network. Every 30 days it expires. You have to renew and pay more money. With this, it's a $10 activation fee, and that's a one-time fee, and it's $10 for 30 minutes, and there's different, price points or whatever for more minutes. But basically, it's just $10 every 90 days for 10 months. So $10 every 3 months. So it's about, $3 a month for phone service on the T-Mobile network. And every 90 days, I have to add 10 more bucks, and the minutes keep on adding up if I don't use them. And if I do that 10 times after that, I don't have to renew or add any more minutes for a year. So it's a great deal if you want to still use your iPhone as a phone, but start using your iPad as your data source. So it was a great experience, and I would highly recommend it. It was much better price points than AT&T when you compare the two, and it worked really well. T-Mobile is very very welcoming in helping me get the iPhone up and running on their network. Yep. So yeah, great price points. And the real challenge I had was trying to find prepaid data SIMs. Data SIMs are very hard to come by, which makes the iPad 3G that much more special because there just isn't anything like it. I tried doing the AT&T prepaid SIMs. Don McAllister's in the States for WWDC. I asked him, what is he doing to do this? And he says he's using a Go Phone SIM card with AT&T, and that requires him to pay $25 worth of phone calls before he can get the $20 for 100 megabytes of data. So, yeah, it's not cheap at all. And that's really the only solution if you want a SIM card for prepaid data in the States. T-Mobile does not offer it, and AT&T, it's very expensive to do it that way. So the iPad is a real bargain in that aspect. So those are my thoughts with, that kind of stuff. Do you have any comments or questions on prepaid stuff? I thought a great many people would be interested in this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think that's in particular with AT&T changing policies and whatnot. I think people might more look to going to T-Mobile. It's certainly not. While it's a violation, let's say it's a violation of your contract. It's or your agreement with. That you signed included Apple saying don't mess with our device.
Yep.
But jailbreaking is so easy to do these days that the more AT&T pushes the wrong buttons, the more people are going to want to go somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's the original iPhone I paid $600 for, more than I did my Wi-Fi iPad, and it was not subsidized. and it's good to get some good use out of it. I'm currently experiencing some problems with my 3G iPhone. I guess the betas expire when you're a beta tester for the new firmwares, and I tried to restore to the new firmware, and it's just not working. So hopefully it starts working pretty soon. But I thought it was pretty cool because most people, the hard part about the phone contracts is not the data, it's really the voice. Because most people, they have rollover minutes because they know no one ever uses all their minutes, and we'd rather have more data and just cut the phone costs down to hardly anything because we don't talk anymore. So I think for $10 a month, it's a great deal that a lot of people should look into if you're trying to save money.
Well, some people don't talk anymore. I mean, I will have to say that while I use, I use the internet through my iPhone a lot to get information, but I still talk a whole lot more than I text. I probably email more than I talk, but so there's still a lot of people that use their phone for talking, and it's good to have that solution available.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. So, enough of that. I just wanted to share my thoughts there. I did that today, and it's been working great so far. I wanted to share some listener feedback. So, I've got a voicemail here. The first one I'm going to play is from Australia. He had some comments regarding some audio issues that I've now since corrected as I've been informed of him, and some thoughts on the launch of the iPad there in Australia. So I'm going to cue this up here on my iPad and play it back right now. So here we go.
Hi Tim, this is also Tim from Australia. Just calling to give you a bit of feedback. I've just been listening to your podcasts and I'm having a bit of trouble with the sound levels. Your voice seems to be very quiet when your other guests in the studio, their levels seem to be very high. And what I find myself doing all the time is, especially when I've got my iPod plugged into the car stereo, I'm turning the volume right up when you're speaking, and then when one of your guests starts to speak, I've got to quickly jump on the volume and turn it right down because it just about blows up my speakers in the car. So, there's been a couple of podcasts now have been like that. No worries when your solo podcast, because it's all one level, I guess, but when you have a guest, I guess some of them are on Skype and there's a problem with levels there, but it's really difficult to listen to when you're just forever turning the volume up to full and down to really low depending on who's speaking. So I find myself turning the podcast off after about 10 minutes just because it's just too hard to drive and change the volume level all the time. So I'm just wondering if that's something that I can fix this end, or whether it's just I don't know whether you've encountered that on your end, if anyone else has sent back any feedback about this. But just interested to know if I can fix that up, because I really enjoy listening to the podcast. But it's a bit hard when you've got to adjust the sound levels all the time. So just a little bit more information for you too. As you know, here in Australia, the iPad launched last Friday, and I actually have my own courier business, and we actually do some work for TNT, who had the national contract to distribute the iPads. And I did hear that there was 6,000 delivered with the pre-orders on the first day, on the Friday, which didn't seem like a hell of a lot to me. But if I find any more information out, I'll let you know. But I think that was, I'm not sure if that was statewide or Australia-wide. It would seem not a lot if it was an Australia-wide release, but maybe that might be right. But I did hear that was that they did deliver 6,000 on the first day. So, but I'll keep you in touch. Okay, have a good day. Bye-bye.
Cool. Well, thanks, Tim, for the feedback. And I do play negative feedback because I think other people should hear that, yes, you're not the only one that might have issues. And I've since gone over the audio and found out what I was doing wrong with the mixing and editing. And I've since, if you re-download the episodes that you're having problems with, the audio should be perfect. I rebalanced the sound. I found out what the issue was and had to do all that. So it should be good now. And it'd be very greatly appreciated if that happens in the future, or if you're still experiencing that, to let me know, because I don't want bad sounding audio out there. I took the time a few weeks ago to actually re-encode all 40 whatever shows there were to make them sound better. So sound quality is something I think is important, and I want to make it good. So thanks for that feedback, Tim, and thanks for letting me know about the Australian launch. Again, lots of feedback from Australia, which has been great. And let's see, moving from there to an email I got regarding an app. It's called Whistle Phone. It says, "Hi Tim, here's a nice app for your listeners. It's called Whistle Phone. It allows you to make free phone calls all over the US via Wi-Fi. The only catch is that you have to listen to a 15-second ad just before the call is placed. Highly recommended, Joel." So that's a cool app. I've downloaded. You still need to play around with it a little bit, but might be a good alternative to Skype for some people. So that's a app to check out. And moving from there, I've got two different feedbacks from the AT&T episode I did on Friday and Saturday. So one's a voice message and one is a email that I'll read back. So here's the voice message.
Hi, this is Arthur Pritchard. I loved your last show. That was really great. And, oh, by the way, I was trying to check out my iPad data usage and to find out where I sat in that whole game. And, well, here's what I found out from AT&T is one that you can't log into their website and create a registered name with an iPad because they said because it doesn't have a contract and therefore you can't create an account that you can actually check your usage on the AT&T website. If you have an iPhone, of course, you can do that, and I have one, and yes, I can in fact check it. But if you want to check your iPad usage, you can't. And so then I said, well, how do I do that? You know, if I want to know what my usage is, he says, well, you can go to your iPad and under your settings, then you can go to cellular data and then view account, and then sign in. And but if you have an unlimited plan, because this is what Marcus from AT&T told me, because if it's unlimited there, you don't have any need to check your data usage. Anyway, he said, however, I could go to a lower plan which monitors your usage and then it would display the usage, but if I switched the plan, I wouldn't be able to come back to my unlimited plan. So there we go. I love AT&T for their logic, or not. Anyway, great show. Talk to you later. Bye.
Well, thanks for that feedback. And yeah, as you said, just go to your settings app and about and usage, and you'll find out how to get to your usage and how you've been holding up as far as going over that 2 gigabyte cap that'll soon be in place. But yeah, I agree. That logic is kind of flawed. Moving on from there, some other feedback regarding AT&T. Hi, Tim. I was upset about the AT&T changes as well, but I think those of us that already purchased the 3G are okay. In fact, I think the fact that they will allow tethering is even better. I called Apple and found that if you already purchased the iPad, you can still have the unlimited plan. Their website says in fine print, available if ordering iPad from Apple online store by June 6th. They did also tell me that I will be able to go back and forth between plans. I will better read the fine print when my iPad arrives. For everyone else, I think it really stinks. By the way, I've been listening to your podcast since you started. Keep up the good work. I love all the tips. Chris. Thanks, Chris, for that feedback. And yeah, it does really stink for those that get it after June 6th. And I was actually looking on AT&T's website to see if they updated their price points for the iPad. And they haven't. As of a couple hours ago, today, they still advertised 250 megs, $15, $30 unlimited. So they still haven't made that switch to let people know, hey, we're changing it. So, yeah, it's not a good thing as we discussed earlier. So, moving from there, we got two more voicemails. And these are related to browsers. The first is a Safari tip, and the other one is kind of asking about third-party browsers and being able to access secure sites. So here we go with the Safari tip.
Hi, Tim. This is Joel Salesman calling. I just had a quick tip I wanted to give to you. By the way, I really enjoy your podcast. It's wonderful. Anyway, here's the tip. Many people use Safari as their web browser, and when you open it, it opens to the last used website. A quicker way to use Safari is to put in the what's it called, the address line, put in the word about blank and save it as a bookmark, which will put it on your iPad, and when you open it, it actually looks like a blank page, and it just it allows you to input something, say, into Google or whatever if you want. Anyway, just a quick tip I learned, and just hope it helps. Thanks. Bye.
So, yeah, great tip. If you want to speed up if you want to go to new websites upon launch, just bookmark that, put in your dock, and launch that instead of Safari. That way, it won't start loading a page you don't want to go to. So, nice little tip there. And the final feedback of today is a browser question here.
Hey, I love your show, and I was the one typing in there tonight. But as for future shows, I'm going to suggest that go research a little bit of the browsers, because apparently the browsers can't get into secure websites. You know, like you have to put in your ID and your password. Only Safari will do that, and apparently only Apple is allowing that API to be called. Otherwise, they'll reject your app. So anyway, I think there's some news in there somewhere. Might be an original for you. So hey, anyway.
Cool. Well, with that last one, I looked in this one a little bit further, and it seems that some apps are actually able to access secure sites that aren't Safari, but they do have to be updated to make sure they support that. It's not something that every third-party browser has, but I haven't seen many cases where they're actually rejected for allowing this. Have you, John?
No, I haven't seen that at all. And I know that those APIs are used by other applications, non-browser applications, to make a secure connection over 443, which is a standard SSL connection. So I would guess that it is something that, as somebody who's programming a browser with WebKit, that you're going to have to, make some specific calls for and do some specific things that maybe some of these browsers have not done. Might be a fair amount of extra work that they haven't felt the need for. So,
Yep.
Surprising, but not when I think about it for a minute.
Yeah, I've seen some updates in the past few weeks or days that have ad support for secure stuff like that. So it is something that not every browser will have, and they might not even had it at launch, but now they do, a lot of them, and a lot still probably don't. So that kind of ends the feedback, and as always, I'd love feedback. I love hearing voicemails or email attachments with voice, so you can send those into iPadPossibilities@gmail.com and 209-542-iPad. That's 4723, and just send that in. I'll play back if it's appropriate for the shows. So there you go. And with that said, let's get on to the title of today's show, which is Jobs at the D8 Conference. So as many people know, Walt Mossberg and a couple other guys host this conference that they bring all of these technology CEOs and kind of the front runners of the business right now and interview them in a very open format that they can get asked some pretty tough questions, but not so tough that they'll want to walk off the stage with. So were you able to check out these videos, John, or how much of this have you read about?
I checked out a few of them, and I read about a number of them. So it was a very interesting conference, and a lot went on there.
Yeah. I was kind of disappointed they didn't release like they did with the Bill Gates, Steve Jobs interview, the full video of it. Instead, they broke it up in clips, and I kind of wish I saw all of it, but that's all right. We got the good stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
But the first one I want to talk about is Steve Jobs revealed the iPad actually, as I thought, came first. They actually started developing the tablet, and once Jobs saw this, they said, let's put this on the shelf and use this technology for the phone. So what do you think about that? Is that hard to imagine?
Well, no, it's not hard to imagine, and it kind of makes a lot of sense. It's kind of interesting, though, that one then begins to think of how kind of almost revolutionary the idea was to actually have Apple make a phone. While there were rumors for a long time, I don't know how much Apple was really playing with phones before they said, "Oh, well, look at this, what this tablet does here, and now let's make a phone out of it." And all of a sudden, the phone was born. So it's kind of interesting to think. But no, I also thought that it would have made sense, particularly with the history of the Newton, that that they would have done something with a little bit larger device in mind than the iPhone. But it certainly makes sense to the revolutionary ability to navigate a phone with your finger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of interesting. I wonder if, now that the iPad's out, if the next iteration of the iPod Touch might be rebranded the iPad Nano or something like that, because it works with some of the iPad accessories. I'd imagine they'll eventually update the camera connection kit, since it doesn't have it might have camera in the future, as we've seen, but I wonder if they'll update it to work with the camera connection kit. It already works with the iPad dock, so I'm wondering if they'll rebrand it in the future. What do you think about that?
That's certainly a possibility. It's although I would see that they would come out with a new iPod Touch, something different in the styling, or so they could justify giving it a new name. But I could certainly see it. Look at how the Mini went. I mean, the iPod Mini was kind of here and gone, and so I would not put that past Apple to do that.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what develops in the Apple's mobile operating system space in the next few years. The next big thing I saw was Jobs is rightly thinking, that digital publications are priced too high. He's saying that, hey, you don't have the overhead of printing them and shipping them, and you're pricing them extremely high. I think he was probably pointing to the $5 issue of Wire, which they sell the print issue for $1. So I think they're saying they're crippling themselves, and that people do want this content. They want these digital publications, but you're being unreasonable with the pricing, and you'd make more money if you were reasonable.
I think it's kind of a chicken and egg kind of thing here. I'm glad that Jobs is pointing it out, because I certainly look at $4.99 for an electronic issue of Wired and kind of say, should I really spend that for that? It might match the printed price on the magazine, but we know that those seldom go for anything close to what they say they are worth. But yeah, I think that the publishers are saying this is new, and while we don't have to print stuff, it's still fairly expensive for us to figure out how to make these things. So there's some justification for it being higher than a print version, but and they're also probably saying, okay, well, we have 2 million of these devices out there, but not everybody's going to buy our magazine, any one of our magazines, right? So until there's enough of them out there that there's a high enough concentration of electronic users, then it's a diminishing return. So it's really a chicken and egg thing. I'm glad that Jobs is there pushing from that direction, and so hopefully that means that they are taking notice. They're not going to keep the prices this high for very long. But I think in the meantime, us early adopters, like always, are going to have to pay through the nose a little bit to get some things. But it'll all come down at the end.
Yeah, for sure. It stopped me from buying digital publications because I'm not willing to spend $5 on a magazine issue. That seems crazy to me. I'd spend $1 easily, and I'd spend more money if they put it all in one app, so I don't have to re-download 50 billion apps for one magazine. I think that's a problem as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would consider resubscribing to some of the print publications that in the past I used to read, that I might pay $20 or $25 for a year subscription, and that would be all good money for them up front to to get their process down and to pay for that, and by the end of the year, they would be pushing these things out for next to nothing and making a lot of money off that. So, yeah, if it was down to kind of the subscription level price for print stuff where it is today, I would probably jump out of a heartbeat. But I don't want to spend $5 or $6 every month for Wired magazine, or anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see how that industry shakes out, or if Apple will come up in OS 5 or even the iPad OS 4, some iMag or something like that. It'll be interesting to see if they do anything. But in the meantime, we'll suffer with the $5 issues. The next very interesting thing that Jobs revealed is he made this analogy of trucks. Trucks used to be the main vehicle that people purchase because they need the power. They need to store stuff and all sorts of things. They need trucks for the power, right? And now as people move to cities, they switch to smaller cars. You have the Mini Cooper now that not a lot of people buy, but you have smaller cars. And he compared PCs, personal computers, including the Mac desktop, like trucks that will be around for a while, but not everybody will need them. Instead, we'll have tablet-like devices like the iPad as the new car that everyone buys, everyone owns, and trucks will be for power users, people that need that power that you get from a truck. And it was very interesting to see his vision of people will be getting rid of, or a lot of people will be getting rid of their trucks and moving away from them to, cars.
Yeah, if you think about this analogy, and I might spin it in a slightly different way, and that is when maybe not 100 years ago, but certainly 80 years ago or 90 years ago, there were a few people who would buy cars because they were wealthy and they bought cars, but most of the vehicles on the road were trucks because they were used for business. They were a business class machine, and they were enabling business. And that's what PCs started to do, but there was also all this hobbyist thing. And in the last 10 years, or maybe a little more, it's gone from being a business tool or a hobbyist thing to being like everybody has to have one because everybody needs to be connected and using a PC. And we didn't have that car for those kind of people to use. And it's taken this long for us to really get something that is the car, and they don't have to go use the business class truck. They can use a car to do what they need to do to be connected, and business can still use the truck and the PC. Yeah. So Jobs is one smart cookie.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. I hadn't thought of that because I wasn't around in that era where, I'm too young. So it's very interesting to hear that analogy, and it's also interesting to think that he believes that we won't need trucks. Everyone won't need to have a truck and a car, which leads me to believe that they'll be taking more of a cloud initiative in the near future, possibly tomorrow. We'll see. But we'll be able to cut that link from the PC to the iPad and get rid of that link altogether within the next couple of years, maybe sooner.
Well, it's certainly, and I'll kind of jump in here and give a case in point. Today, this weekend, I took a little trip with my spouse, and we were gone, and this is the first time that I've ever gone for a weekend trip that I didn't really feel like I needed to take a computer with me. And I took the iPad, and I was hoping that at our hotel that we'd have Wi-Fi, and I'd catch up on the news or whatever. And it's interesting from two aspects. One aspect is I collected an email on my iPhone from my work that came in late Friday that I didn't see until we were already on the road Saturday, and I have a last-minute trip that I need to make next Tuesday, and so I was like, okay, well, I really need to book this trip now so that it's not like, I don't book it the last minute and have the worst possible fare for it. And so I found once I did get to the hotel room, I was able to book that without any problem, and over the iPad. So that was a very good thing. I probably could have done it on the iPhone. It would have been a struggle just to get everything typed in and all that. But with the iPad, it was almost as easy as doing it with my laptop. The other thing to recount is that my spouse wanted to see photos that I had taken during the day from my digital camera. And of course, I have yet to buy a camera connection kit. So there was no way for me to transfer those to the iPad. So, she had to just accept the fact that she could look at them on the camera and not on a big screen, which is what, she's used to me pulling out the laptop and loading up the pictures. And so, one, that means I need to get a camera connection kit, but it does kind of show that with some preparation and whatnot, that you can do most things with the iPad. With that car, you don't need the truck. Certainly for business, I still need the truck. Mm-hmm. But, I was even able to do some light business work with the car and not have the truck. So.
Yeah. It sounds like you need one of those iFi cards as well.
Or I need to buy
the camera connection kit, yeah.
Camera connection kit, the 3G iPad.
Yeah.
I need both of those, yeah. Absolutely.
It's interesting. Jobs also mentioned, I forgot to put this in the show notes, but I also remember reading Jobs mention that he was asked about creation on the iPad, and people consider the iPad a consumption device. Jobs said, no, we don't consider the iPad a consumption device alone. That's why it's a modular type system where if you need to create, we give you the tools to do that. We give you a Bluetooth or a dock keyboard. And we also have the iPad camera connection kit, which Jobs actually says one day the iPad will be used to edit videos. It'll be in big, heavy duty, creation things like that. And I actually tested this. I've got the camera connection kit. I've got a camera that shoots video. And I was able to take out that SD card, put it in the camera connection kit, import that video onto my iPad, and use Real Director to actually edit basically home videos or simple edits I was able to do very easily on the iPad. And it just shows me that it's getting closer and closer. It's through applications. Apple's given us the tools we need. We just need the software to edit our audio, edit our video, edit our photos. But the tools are all there to get the content onto the device in an easy way. But Jobs defended the fact that the iPad is a creation tool, and I think it's the apps that are really holding us back right now.
So I wonder if Bill Gates was listening to him, because I saw a quote from Bill Gates at D8 saying that the iPad wasn't a creation device, and so you can't input into it. And I'm like, gee, I put a lot of stuff into the iPad. I record, he was saying, you still need to be able to use a pen, and you still need to be able to do voice recording. And I'm like, I've done voice recording on the iPad. I don't know what you're talking about. And I use a little stylus. It's not a pen, but it works pretty well. So yeah, I'm using the iPad to actually write a book. So it's distraction free, and I'm using external keyboards, and sometimes the built-in keyboard actually use it as a writing tool. And I've used it with high-end audio mics through that camera connection kit since it supports USB audio. So all the tools are there to record high-end audio, to input video or photos, and the tools are there. We just need to exploit them through apps. So I think it's very interesting, and the next year will be very telling as far as what apps come out. I'd love to see. I think it'd be interesting if Apple demoed like a iLife for iPad. I think they'll do that at some point, perhaps at the September event, perhaps tomorrow. I have no idea. I expect a lot of surprises tomorrow. I expect we'll have iPhone 4, but I think we'll have a lot of unknowns announced tomorrow. So we'll see with all that. I think it's a great analogy, trucks and cars and all that. But
There are a couple other things he talked about. One was AT&T's service. He was asked by an audience member, hey, I love my iPhone. The data works great. I have fast speeds with data, but the phone I lose my calls every minute, and I can't make voice calls. So he was asked about that, and he said from people he knows and trusts that the network will be better by the end of the summer. And after seeing AT&T's recent data changes, I have to believe that either means they're expecting lower usage to fix this by the caps, or they'll announce that T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon all have iPhones starting tomorrow, and it won't be as much of a problem. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with all that. We already kind of talked about this a little bit earlier.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, some people might say, well, AT&T could beef up their network, but I don't see they could beef it up in 3 months. So, yeah, they either see different carriers to lower usage, or they see, some other factor that makes it AT&T's service better.
Yeah, and before the price changes, I have the utmost respect for AT&T because they put in a ton of money beefing up their networks and making it, as people probably know, the fastest 3G network. But in certain areas, it's not the most reliable because there's so many users. But I have the utmost respect for them until they change their pricing with, flash of a wand. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow and throughout this year, and see if we do get different carriers. Something I did not mention is there's been rumors that Verizon's actually been testing the iPad, so there might be some truth to this. We might see different carriers, so we'll find out later this year, hopefully. The next segment Jobs was asked about is TV, and why no one's really done it right. Jobs is quoted saying, TV is a mess. There's too many boxes. There's no unified interface because of that. There's too many remotes. You see tables loaded with remotes. It's a subsidized service, so we're kind of forced to use the boxes they give us because no one really wants to pay for a set-top box because we're given one anyway. And there's no standards worldwide. They're all different connections throughout the world, so if Apple made a device, it might only work in America, and they don't like that. So he was kind of summed up the TV industry as being a mess right now, and that's why no one's been able to do it right. He quoted Roku. He quoted Google will find this out in a few months, and that's why he said Apple TV is a hobby. So I think we may see Apple do a new Apple TV in the future, and Jobs is well known for going back on what he said, and it was a mess until we came here, right?
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it only means that today, the day Jobs said this, that TV was a mess, and probably nothing that Apple's gonna deal with. Stuff changes all the time. So, Steve's opinion of it, I think, changes pretty rapidly too. So, yeah. But he is right. I mean, TV and certainly movies. Those folks are not really learning from all the stuff that the music industry went through, and it remains to be seen whether the publishing world will, with books and stuff, will learn any lessons from history. But we hope.
Yeah. And I think if Apple does go into the industry, they'll do a separate box. They won't try to do what Google did and do an IR Blaster and try to hook up with your current box because they're all different and all that kind of stuff. I think Apple will, as we've heard rumors of, do an iPhone OS, that just another platform to develop apps on, and you'll have Netflix and possibly Hulu and all those kinds of sources. And I think Apple's real goal would be to get rid of your cable bill and just switch over to Apple TV, which you get Hulu and Netflix, and you can just do that instead.
I'd be all for it if I could really make it work.
Yeah, I would be too. It's not quite there. I think Apple could do it though with large amount of apps that do video, and I think Hulu's kind of the big player that needs to take part in that. Yep. But from there we've got a couple other things that he talked about. First is Gizmodo, and he was asked if he should let it slide, and his response to that is he wants to to Apple's core values. He states that Apple's had the same core values it did back in 1984 when the Mac launched or whatever. Back when Apple started, he says that we have the same core values, and that's why we've succeeded as a company. We don't relax on those things.
Yeah, and this kind of gets me kind of going is how much people, in particular, some of the tech media, get down on Apple, and yet they turn around and report something by another company, and it's like all roses and little birds or whatever. It's just Apple's a company in for business. I mean, just because they're based in the Bay Area doesn't mean that they're the Peace Corps. They are a business. They're there to make money. I think that they do a good job and respond to things. I mean, a few years ago, the green folks were all against them, right? And so they made some major changes, and now they win awards for being green. And they do listen to the people, but they are not a charity or a company out there just to make everybody happy with them. They're out there to make money, and they're struggling. I mean, yes, their market cap has now exceeded Microsoft's, but the fact of the matter is that they don't own the microcomputer world, and they can't just do everything they want to. They're going to do things that they think are going to help them make money. End of story.
Yep. And kind of during that segment, he also said he gets his motivation to get up every day and go to work and all of that from emails he gets from people that say, we love the iPad. This is fantastic. And thank you so much for creating it. So he gets motivation from the user base, the customers. So as he said, and I think it's probably true.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, he's certainly kind of one of those guys that are probably beyond being really motivated much by personal wealth, And I think he's out there to really empower people. I mean, he's always kind of said that, and he's out there to make life easier for a certain segment of the world, and that's the segment that uses high tech stuff for their job or their hobby or whatever, and he wants to make it more seamless, more invisible to get work done, and that's probably what drives him at this point.
Yeah, I agree completely. It's interesting. He mentioned a little bit later that we don't have the most resources out of any company, and I think they have a lot of resources. I bet they use them wisely.
Yeah, Apple, in my knowledge of Apple over the years, and many years ago I was in Apple offices once or twice and saw people working and had some dealings with Apple from a business perspective, and they don't have the fluff that I've seen at other large computer companies that might be a little further north than them. I think that they try to operate fairly lean and mean, and they certainly have a lot of people, but they do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, for sure. The next, he was asked by the audience about analytics apps that are integrated with some of the iPhone apps out there, and he started rejecting some of these apps because they stole your device info, such as new Apple prototypes they're working on campus. And Jobs was PO'd about this. He was furious, and he clearly told the audience that's why we started rejecting these. They're not asking you, can we grab this data to use for our analytics? And he was angry about it. He believes that as the iPhone OS tells you, hey, we're using your location right now, do you want to say yes to this? That should happen for ads that try to steal your data too. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, this goes back to the whole privacy thing, and there was a whole nother thing, a whole nother stream of privacy at D8, which focused a lot on Facebook. But the fact of the matter is that there are techniques there that Apple pushes for you to ask people, about using their data, and that is just the common courtesy kind of thing to do. It's like, just do it. Ask people before you start using that stuff, and there it really depends upon what they're asking. Like, I can understand that somebody might say, well, I just want to know if somebody is using my app, if they didn't just download it and never used it. And so if somebody uses my app and I say, hey, here's somebody that used your app in an untraceable way, then that's one thing. But if you're starting to collect other information, then you need to be up there and asking people if you can collect that information. And certainly location. I mean, that's just part and parcel of its location is too big of a thing as far as privacy goes. There's too many ways that kind of information can be used against somebody for them not to make people specifically say, yes, you can use my location.
Yep, I agree. And Apple's address location in the next update. And anytime location is being used by an app, you'll have a little navigation, little triangle in the top right screen to let you know you're doing that. And I guess I'm more open about, I live in public. I share my location through Google Latitude a bunch, and I'm very open to that kind of stuff. I just figure everything's out there, and people, if they want to know it, they can. But other people have different thoughts on that, and some people are more private than the others. So people should.
And some people may have more concern. I mean, you're a young man in good health, and it's not likely somebody's going to come stalk you at night, or try to kidnap you or carjack you or whatever. Mm-hmm. I mean, for someone like you, it's less likely than maybe an older person, or a young woman or a kid. Mm-hmm. Those are all cases where you probably don't want people to be able to track the behavior of somebody and find out where they're going to be.
Yep, I agree. Yeah, for me, I'm completely open. I have no concerns of that kind of stuff. But yeah, if I was a young woman or whatever, I'd not want to share that, because there's some creepy people out there that are right in the head. And other, use cases, I wouldn't want my children probably sharing with the whole world where they are every second, as you can on Google Latitude with certain phones, and even the iPhone if it's jailbroken. So, yeah. Moving from there, let's see, what else was there? I'm trying to give everyone kind of the overview about what Jobs talked about, so if you didn't watch the videos, you can get that from this show here. The next kind of big thing he talked about was Apple, to his knowledge, has never been in a platform war, but they simply want to build the best products out there, and that's, he said that's probably why they lost the platform war against Windows, because they weren't in one. So, kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of hard to justify your war strategy if you aren't in a war.
Yeah, exactly. We got two more kind of talking points here. The next one's kind of a big one. It kind of opened up the whole interview. This was the first question out of the gate after the Microsoft cap question, but kind of on Flash. And Jobs refused respond to the Flash question about Apple chooses the technology that has a future, implying Flash doesn't have a future. He challenged Adobe. This is the more interesting part. He actually told Adobe and challenged them to create a fast version for the iPhone, and they never came back and never created one for them. So what that tells me is Adobe couldn't find a way to do it, and if they did, it would have been on the iPad and the iPhone, but they couldn't create it because they don't have good enough developers to do that, I guess. So one day it might actually be on the iPad, but as I've said earlier, they currently can't create a good mobile version of Flash. So And he said the market will tell us what is good, and so far the market's responded positively to the iPad.
Yeah, I mean, I agree in so many ways with what Jobs is really talking about with Flash. I mean, if you really think about Flash has been around for a long time, and it was around before we had all of these security issues and all of these attacks on individuals' computers. And by it, not that Adobe hasn't tried, but by its very nature, I think it's an impossible task to make Flash really be the secure thing. I don't know if you know, but Friday there was announced a new vulnerability in Flash, and it's apparently all versions except the beta 10.1 version. So the deal is that Flash is a big target to be attacked. It's a fairly successful target to attack. And we have so many people who have written so much, and I'll use the term lightly, crap in Flash with all the ads and everything else, that it is unstable. It's just so unstable. There's so much of a difference I have noticed since I started using Flash blockers in my browsers. It's just I don't have browsers quitting. I don't have browsers bringing down the whole OS like I used to all the time. So yeah, it's a technology whose time has passed, and it's time to move on to something else.
I agree. It was interesting. He compared Flash to HyperCard that was huge in its day, but Apple decided not to go with it, and Apple decided to get rid of the huge floppies and go down to the 3¼ inch, and they eventually nixed the floppies altogether before any of the industries did by a good 4 years. I was remembering Macs that dropped it like 4 years, and then I still saw PCs sold with floppy drives. So
yep.
Apple's been
and they were 5¼ that went down to 3½ inch. But
okay, good to know. I ran across some floppies cleaning out my room the other day. It's like, wow, I don't have anything that can read this anymore.
Yeah, I got rid of some cleaning out something in the past year, I remember. I've seen 8-inch floppies. You probably may not have even heard of 8-inch floppies, but there were 8-inch floppies. The 5¼ was such a great deal instead of a huge 8-inch floppy, and so much more storage. Yeah, and then the 3½ inch were just phenomenal, and all that stuff's old stuff, and don't even want to think about it. And yeah. Flash is kind of the same way. It's like if there was no Flash tomorrow, I would be happy. Yeah,
I would be too. I did end up using Cloud Browse, I was talking about last week, and I tried it on the iPhone. It's hard to deal with that app in the small screen, but the iPad blown up, it works great, and I was actually trying to get the Blue Mic site, and navigation is done in Flash, so sometimes you have to use it, I think due to poor web design, because I think everything should downscale gracefully. But, yeah. No,
that's a very valid point, and that's one of the problems with us getting rid of Flash is that, a lot of places, 5 years ago didn't have the capabilities that we have today with using more standard approaches to making really interactive things. I mean, it used to be you couldn't make a website be like an application. It was always a website, and Flash was the first way available to kind of let it be more like a real application. Mm-hmm. And now we have so many better ways of doing it. People just need to update their websites and get rid of it.
Yep, I agree. The last bit of news from D8 is Siri was purchased not for its search. They were asked, are they challenging Google in search as a business? But no, they're actually going to be starting to use that for AI technology. So that might see its way into the iPad or iPhone and create that knowledge navigator or whatever kind of experience.
Yeah, that is pretty exciting to hear that. I played around with Siri a little bit. I think those people that were, are in one of the top 3 major metropolitan areas probably get more usage out of it than I do. But it's an interesting little app. But it's so by saying that, I'm saying it's not incredibly useful for me. But it does show some of the capabilities that are possible, and it really shows there's some talented folks there that we're dealing with that.
Yep. Merlin Mann raves about this app, so it should be interesting to see what Apple does with this app and the technology and kind of developers that created this app. So it'll be interesting to see what Apple does in the next 10 years. It's been an interesting 10 years that we've now just come across. 2010, we've seen the birth of the iPod, the iPhone, and the iPad. So next 10 years should be even more interesting to see what happens.
Yep.
So, yep. From there, I wanted to let everyone know we are going to be doing a live show tomorrow evening, kind of discussing WWDC and kind of the possibilities that opened up due to that announcements made there by Steve Jobs and his gang. So I'm planning on, what do you think about 8:45 tomorrow night? Would that be possible, John, you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably doable.
Okay, so tentatively tomorrow night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we'll have the live show once again here. And I'll push this episode out immediately to everybody once it's edited, so you don't have to wait till Tuesday, so everyone knows about that, and I'll also Twitter about it. But also follow my Twitter feed, T-Chan, and I'll post when we're actually going live. But tentatively 8:45 tomorrow, and I'll be following along as the keynote starts up. It starts at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then 10 a.m. in the West Coast. So lots of announcements, and hopefully I'll have iPad 4.0 to try out tomorrow night. So won't be able to share that with everybody because SDK, NDA stuff or whatever. But yeah, should be an interesting day tomorrow.
Yeah, I look forward to it and seeing what's announced. And I wonder if we'll hear some other announcements as the week goes on, or whether we'll get everything at one time. But it'll be interesting, definitely.
And hopefully we'll have actually a developer that's in attendance from the conference that works with John. So that might happen, might not. We'll see.
Yep. See how his schedule goes, but hopefully we can get him to join us.
Yep, definitely. So with that said, let's move on to kind of the picks of the week. And John, can you start us off with your pick?
Sure. My pick is kayak flights. I used to use kayak extensively on the web. Kayak is there to help you find flights, and whether that be the least expensive flight or the most convenient flight or whatever. And I've used it on the iPhone, but as I say, I was computerless and tried it on the iPad. It has a great iPad interface, and it was just very, very simple to use, and it would be one of my picks, or the pick for this week. So for me, great app, free. You can use it without signing up. I think I don't know if on the website you get some added advantages of having signed up. I don't know if I haven't actually seen if the app gives you any advantages by being signed up, but it's a great way to find flights. You can, also find hotel prices that match up with what you put in for flights. But certainly something you should check out.
Very cool. I actually had this installed already on my iPad and actually used it to kind of look up prices. I'm trying to make my way out to San Francisco for Macworld 2011. I'm trying to find a way to do that. I need to start creating some extra money to do that, but I use Kayak to kind of get an idea of what it might cost to do that. Yeah,
definitely. And like I say, it's focused, and its original focus was on flights. It also helped you find rental cars or hotels. But definitely a good thing to have. With a lot of my relatives are always asking me, "Hey, I need to go from point A to point B. Can you find me a good?" So I always turn to kayak and find them flights. So
Yeah, very cool. 2 picks, and one's kind of the second one's, as I'll talk later, is kind of a plug about some other stuff I'll be up to pretty soon here. But the first is an app called Words with Friends. This is kind of a Scrabble knockoff that I've heard about on other shows. And they have their own little community that's quite large, and they have apps for the iPhone as well. It's not universal, so it's a different app. But I currently have 3 different games have access to play. I've got 5 I'm working on now. But you'll have this simple, Scrabble board interface, and you'll have your tiles down here that you just flick up, and then you can recall, you can swap letters, resign. So very addicting app, because you can just have so many games going on at once. You can have like 10, 15 games that you're working on and just be playing Scrabble all day, and you get push notifications when you're done with the game, or when you're able to play next, and all those other things. So Words with Friends, it's I believe $3. It's the HD version. Fantastic little game that I've enjoyed quite a bit, helping me get better at Scrabble each and every day.
Now, Tim, don't you also have the actual Scrabble game?
I do.
Yeah, and so how would you compare the two of them together? I mean, if somebody could only buy one, would you recommend one over the other?
For the price conscience, I should say I did get this. I paid for this app. This was not a free promo, so I just want to mention that. I did pay for this one. I say it's a better value for your. It's $3 versus $10 for the Scrabble app. So if you're worried about cost, this is a great way. If basically your sole reason of purchasing this app is to play with people online, because just by cost. But I think Scrabble's the better app if you want to play it with some friends or whatever, with iPhones flicking tiles on there. But you're able with the Scrabble app as well to connect with Facebook and play people that way. So they share a lot of the same features, but just a different community, different set of people you're playing with. I know some fellow podcasters that play Words with Friends that aren't on Facebook playing it that way. So I think you have access to different people, and very similar, but different price points, I think, is the biggest difference there.
Right. So would you say that even though it's more expensive, that Scrabble itself might be a little bit better for playing with some people face to face, and then if you're looking at playing remotely, then this might be better for the price point?
Yeah, I agree completely, because as people probably know, and we've talked about earlier, Scrabble has that tile rack app that you can just have your iPhones or iPod touches and use that as your tile rack and flip tiles onto the board. So it's a better app for playing as a board game versus just a standalone app that you play with people online with. So if you have the $10, I'd get Scrabble, but if you don't, I'd get Words with Friends. So just up to you, basically. Yeah.
Okay. And just a question: have you has that tile rack been updated? I know initially you said it was a little problematic. Have they gotten past their stability issues with that?
It has been updated once, as has been the Scrabble app for the iPad. I have not tested if it's been more stable. That may have been fixed with that update. I'm not exactly sure. I know it has been updated though, so I'm still not sure if it's completely fixed or not.
Okay.
So it has been updated, but no idea if it's working perfectly yet. So I wanted to move on to my final pick, and this is I probably picked it before, but it's the App Advice app. And the reason I'm picking this is I will shortly, within the week, be starting to be an App Advice team member, writing app guides and app lists. So kind of from the information I cover on this podcast, I'll kind of translate some of those to articles for App Advice. So I just wanted to let everyone know, if they want to read some articles written by me, I'll be on App Advice later in this week and next week, and kind of posting new articles there. So It's the App Device app. I think it's $3 and gives you access to app news and great little app. I think it's universal, so it can run on your iPhone as well. So just want to kind of announce that I'm working with them pretty soon here.
Well, congratulations on that, Tim. That sounds like a lot of good use of your knowledge and help out people. And I think it's a good thing that you're out there writing about app advice. Are you going to focus on the iPad, or are you going to do it across all?
I'll probably focus on the iPad just because that's what I cover most. And yeah, I'm very excited about working with them and start writing, because that's something I'm starting to write a book, and it'll be good to have another avenue where I can write on a regular basis and get edited and make sure I'm writing well. So yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. I've written 2 articles that I'm gonna start learning about how to publish and everything on Wednesday, so should be exciting as that kind of rolls out, and I'll let you know which articles are mine and all that as they get published. So
great.
So let's see. With that said, that kind of wraps up this show, and we'll be back tomorrow night. So
yeah,
double duty
actually,
this week. Yeah.
Tim, there is one thing that and I haven't talked to you about this yet, but one of the things that I am looking at doing, and I would certainly appreciate any listener feedback if they've had any experience, but I am going to be looking at applications that allow you to mock up applications, websites, those types of things. So I know there's iMockup, there's another one called, I think, SketchyPad or something. But I'm gonna be looking into those kind of things, and if the listeners have any experience with any of that stuff, I'd love to hear what their experience is.
As far as wireframe apps?
Yeah, doing wireframes and that type of thing. Yep.
I know OmniGraffle, which you have a copy of. They've got some, what do they call them? I forget what they call them, but download them. And oh, sorry.
Yeah, they'll be. I'll be using some stencils with OmniGraffle in my testing as well.
Okay.
And, so I'm going to try to look at it across a number of apps, similar to what you did with the music applications.
Oh, I got you. So kind of comparison of what's out there and.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah. And so, if any of the listeners have any experience, I'd love to hear from them.
Okay, I'll keep my eye open from them, and I'll forward those emails to you as I get them, and voicemails as I get them as well.
Great.
So once again, you can leave feedback and answer John's question with some apps that do that. And you're looking for iPhone and iPad apps, or just iPad apps?
I'm going to focus on iPad, just because I think it's more useful. But I did notice that there were a few iPhone apps that have a few nuances that haven't made it over. Some of the some little tricky things that they do. So I might include a few of those and actually see how well they work on the iPad in 2x mode or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So once again, John's looking for some apps that will help you design websites and applications too on your iPad, as far as figuring out the user interface and kind of the look and feel of everything. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Great.
And with that said, where can people find you on the interwebs, John?
Probably Twitter. Jay Finnan on Twitter.
Okay, awesome. And I'm T Chatton on Twitter, and also check out thepossibilitiesnetwork.com for all the latest info on this podcast and other podcasts. And as I said before, we'll be, once again, John and I, and maybe some other people will be here tomorrow night, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, to talk about the WWDC keynote. And with that said, if you want to support this show, you can do that by becoming a premium member of the podcast. And that's one of the best ways to support the show. And with that, you get ad-free versions of this podcast. You get the episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. You get extra episodes every now and then. And it's just a great way to support the show. And one of the best things that kind of pays for the membership of this subscription is I'll actually send you guys out an email if you're part of the premium membership before anyone else knows about the free applications that I get from developers. I'll send it out to you and ask if you want it before anyone else. So that's one of the biggest perks of being a premium member. It's $2 a month. And you can check it out at thepossibilitiesnetwork.com. And you can also, if you want to just simply get the episodes early, you can get the iPad Possibilities podcast app for $2.99 in the App Store. So you'll get the episodes Monday, Wednesday, and Friday instead of Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. And every now and then I throw in some extra episodes, video episodes, to that app. And then also in iTunes. It'd be greatly appreciated if you can just leave a review, and that would be greatly appreciated. So that's how you can support this show. And feedback, as I said earlier, is at iPadPossibilities@gmail.com and 209-542-iPad. So this is John and Tim with the iPad Possibilities podcast, and we will return tomorrow for a special WWDC episode. Have a great night.